Welcome to today's meeting. I am Victoria Petro, District 1, and I have the pleasure of chairing tonight. We continue to host hybrid meetings to keep everyone healthy and safe. Our meetings are public, and you're welcome to join us in person or by watching from the Council's agenda page, Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable, and thank you for participating today. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us. Thank you. And thank you again to everyone who's joining us tonight, both in person and online. Before we move to the agenda, I want to mention and remind everyone about our rules of decorum, which are in place to ensure our meetings move along well and help everyone feel comfortable sharing their comments. A copy of the full rules of decorum are available at the door, and our staff will post them in the Zoom. Which brings us to item A4. The work session meeting minutes of January 17th, 2023. I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilmember Fowler.
Second.
A second from Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed by like sign? Were you an opposed or were you delayed?
No, I'm a delayed yes.
All right. That is 7 in support, none opposed. The motion passes. This brings us to the public hearings portion of the evening. As some of you may noticed, we switched our platform from WebEx to Zoom, and with this comes a few changes. If you'd like to comment on a public hearing today, we're accepting comments in person and online on Zoom. Isaac Canedo from our staff will moderate our Zoom and will message you with any questions about your registration. Staff is handling many tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal information updates. If you need to speak with our staff, please select Isaac, spelled I-S-A-A-C, Canedo, from the list of participants. Please only use the chat to chat for troubleshooting and registration inquiries, and be sure to direct your message to Isaac only. If you need to, please use the raise hand control to indicate that you need something from the host. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling the names of those that wish to comment. Our staff adds the names of people who are registered to speak or who turned in a comment card to a list for each public comment item. We will call the names of people on Zoom and in person based on the order of registration or received comment cards. If you're on Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. And with that, we'll start our public hearings. Item B1 is an ordinance on the Homeless Resource Center text amendment. Before we start taking comments, I'll turn the time over to Nick Tarbett, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Council will be briefed on a proposal that would do the following for the Homeless Resource Text Amendment. It would establish a process for approving future homeless resource centers, create a homeless resource center overlay zoning district, adopt provisions for temporary and seasonal homeless resource centers, and modify existing standards for homeless resource centers and homeless shelters. If the Council does not adopt an ordinance by May 3rd, 2023, Ordinance 15B of 2022 will go into effect. That would return the city's zoning ordinance to the standards outlined in City Code prior to October 2021.
Thank you, Nick. Taylor, please start with our public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like we have 8 people here to speak to this item. The first will be Paul Webster, followed by Bridget Wire, and then Michelle Flynn. Paul, you may now unmute.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Paul Webster. I'm the Executive Director of Solutions Utah.
Solutions Utah is a public policy advocacy organization. Whoops, sorry. Boy, that changed my whole look here. We're a public policy advocacy organization that focuses on homelessness and solving homelessness and its impacts on the community. We'd like to focus on just a couple of items that are contained in the provisions of the proposed Homeless Resource Center Amendment. And we're concerned because oftentimes they don't encourage better outcomes and keep the public informed of the impacts of homeless resource centers. In fact, with respect to the provision on firearms, we believe they make the communities and homeless resource centers more dangerous. We provided a document with a number of concerns, but I wish to emphasize just three. First, I want to thank you for removing from consideration the ministerial approval of so-called small shelters. Solutions Utah appreciates the removal of this provision because it was based on no evidence and no facts suggesting that smaller shelters produce smaller impacts in the community. Second, we recommend that police reports attributed to calls related to HRCs be included in the HRC's annual report. Police reports are more substantive and provide a higher degree of objectivity than complaints from the public, and they also indicate whether public and community safety goals are being met with respect to homeless resource centers. Lastly, the language regarding the collection and securing of firearms is a significant safety concern for the community. Homeless resource centers should have no authority to collect and secure firearms. Staff are not trained. There's no information if firearms collected will have trigger or chamber locks, be kept in a gun safe in a secure separate room. HRCs should not be in the business of handling firearms and keeping them on the premises. Noticing that firearms are prohibited inside homeless shelters and providing means to detect firearms is critical.
Next will be Bridget Wire, followed by Michelle Flynn, and then Adair Kovac. Bridget, you may now unmute.
I believe I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I am Reverend Bridget Weir, and I'm an ordained Lutheran pastor, and I have been serving as chaplain for the Second and Second Coalition down at First United Methodist for several months. And I would like to speak to this amendment in that it is very important that we have enough beds and shelter space for our unhoused siblings. The proposal does not even make a dent and continues to exacerbate the issue. In my time at Second and Second, we house 85 souls every night for our movie nights. And I can tell you there has been no impact, no complaints, no issues, only people being fed, housed, and creating community, genuine community that every person deserves. Here we are in the most holy of weeks for my faith tradition, the one where we recount the passion of Jesus, who taught us to love and care for our neighbor. And I think it's ironic we're having this conversation in Holy Week. Can we as people come together with compassion to understand that when we love and care for each other, we love and care for ourselves, and that this relationship that we are in together matters. When we don't house our unhoused siblings, that is more trauma. There is more hunger. It exacerbates all the problems that this kind of housing can solve. I implore the county council, I implore you to ensure that there is a safe, loving place for every unsheltered Utahn to go to each and every night. This solution is simply not enough, and we need to care for our neighbor. Thank you very much.
And next will be Michelle Flynn, followed by Adair Kovac, and then Carl Moore. Michelle, you may now unmute.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Michelle Flynn, and I serve as Executive Director of the Road Home. I'd like to express our support of the Homeless Resource Center text amendment before you with some feedback for you to consider as well. We've been providing feedback throughout around 2 years of this process and really appreciate the evolution of the proposal that's happened over that time and the outreach that the planning staff has completed. I want to be clear, we have no plans to develop a new homeless resource center in Salt Lake City at this time. We do work closely with our partners, and our feedback is based on our, this year, 100 years of experience providing support and developing shelter and housing facilities for people in throughout Salt Lake County. We're a strong partner with the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness, and will continue that work to help prioritize the types of new services and projects that are needed, and ensure that our goal is to reduce the number of shelter beds and resource centers that are needed, and support Salt Lake City and other leaders in the development of the deeply affordable housing that's needed. You know that we operate the Gail Miller Resource Center in Salt Lake City, as well as a number of supportive housing programs. But in addition to operating in Salt Lake City, we've developed and continue to operate the Family Resource Center in Midvale, which opened in 1998. And we want to reiterate our support of a collaborative and multi-city solution to meet the needs. And then I also want to recognize the really significant change that this proposal outlines and what that means for you in your role as council members. This change moves us away from the designated zones with conditional use approvals to this new model where we take equity and proximity into other resource centers into consideration when evaluating these sites, and really has the city council in the driver's seat. And we appreciate you taking that role and look forward to working with you in the days ahead.
Next will be Adair Kovac, followed by Carl Moore, and then Rocky Anderson. Adair, you may now unmute.
Hi, I'd like to urge you to pass the original version of this from the planning committee that put a lot of thought, a lot of knowledge into its decisions. These HRCs, while inadequate to the scale of the problem, could indeed, at least it opens up a possibility of a lifeline if more of these HRCs are available. And we have people dying on the streets right now. We have people dying of sepsis in the hospital. We have people losing parts of their body. We have people losing their loved ones because they can't afford housing right now. So I really urge you to pass the original version, and certainly not to reduce the number, the maximum number of occupants in the HRCs. If it goes from 40 to 10, 10 is simply not enough to operate an HRC. It's not viable at all. And as a volunteer at the Second and Second Coalition, I can assure you 40 people who are experiencing homelessness are not a threat to anyone's community. We're, every night we operate, we're out there in a room, basically one room, two rooms, with 85 people. And you know what they're doing? They're talking to their friends. They're getting some rest. They're eating food. They're charging their phones. These are people like anyone else. And I'd urge you, if you're not sure whether they're threatening or not, to just go down there. It's open tonight. You can see what people are, learn their stories. But yes, please pass this without watering it down, without making it no longer even part of the solution. We're about to see 600 people kicked out onto the streets as the overflow beds close over the next couple of weeks. This is a huge problem. It's already not enough beds. Thank you.
And next will be Carl Moore, followed by Rocky Anderson, and then Nigel Swaby. Carl is here in person.
All right, so my name is Carl Moore, and I'm exhausted. I am tired. I don't get paid shit for what I do. I started a number of nonprofits, Pandos. We've been doing advocacy for Indigenous people, also marginalized communities. SLCI Protectors, we advocate for marginalized communities and advocate for responsibility of our people. I helped started Ours, Our Unsheltered Relatives. We feed people every Saturday on the block. I am the new chairperson of Unsheltered Utah, and I just want to say that all of these organizations, including MMIW plus Utah, are object to this amendment that reduces the capacity from 40 to 10 people in every district times 7, that's 70 people. And as a person who is one of the key organizations in the second coalitions, we house 85 people. We take care of 85 people. I want to remind everybody that you all get paid. You all get paid. Every single one of y'all get paid, and we don't get paid, and we have volunteers from all over this freaking state come here to take care of our relatives because our relatives matter. This city cares more about animals, dogs, and cats than it does about people living on the streets. Our logo here is a symbol of us as a relationship with each other. We're all related. We're all related, and we take care of each other. And I want to remind y'all also that you're all on stolen land, and whatever authority or whatever the crap you think you have, just check yourselves. Check yourselves. So all these people who oppose these things or whatever, they need to check themselves too, because they're living on stolen land, okay? And I know that that seems trivial to a lot of people, but that is serious. This is serious. You all have occupied a territory that is not yours historically, nor is it mine historically. My place is from Arizona. But I just want to remind y'all that you have an obligation, a moral obligation to take care of people. You get paid. We don't get paid.
Thank you, Carl.
Next will be Rocky Anderson, followed by Nigel Swaby, and then Sean McMillan. Rocky is here in person.
Good evening. Our city is at its lowest moral point in terms of its treatment of people who are most in need. If I left my dog outdoors to freeze to death, I would rightly be prosecuted. Yet our elected city officials have left human beings outdoors this brutal winter to freeze to death and suffer untold tragedies. Demonstrating an uncivilized cruelty, our mayor has sent police officers, street division employees, and a company under contract with the city to raid homeless encampments, pushing homeless people from where they have tried to set up a place to simply exist when there are no beds and no space available at any so-called resource centers or the overflow shelter, and where there are no alternative places for the hundreds of people left out in the cold to go. During these raids, usually ignored by our news media, the city has paid employees and contractors to confiscate and destroy the property of homeless people, including tents, clothing, and medications. During a recent raid, I met a man who was only wearing socks on his feet in bitterly freezing weather because he couldn't put on shoes. I took him to an emergency room, and he had massive frostbite and trench foot. That's the result of how homeless people are being treated at this very moment by Salt Lake City government. Our city's elected officials knew that the space in resource centers has been woefully inadequate since the destruction of the road home downtown. Yet, at our mayor's behest, you voted to prohibit shelters of any size for homeless people. For the sake of fundamental decency, stop prohibiting and unreasonably limiting shelters in our community. Instead, reverse course and provide shelter. That is a solution that promotes the interests of residents, businesses, and homeless people alike.
Thank you, Rocky.
Next will be Nigel Swaby, followed by Sean McMillan, and then Janet Hemming. Nigel's here in person.
Good evening, council members. My name is Nigel Swaby. I'm the chair of the Fair Park Community Council. We sent a letter or an email earlier on this subject. Being in a community that served as Salt Lake's last 2 temporary homeless resource overflows, I wanted to make a couple comments tonight about this, and I want you to think about a few things. First off, will this proposal provide equitable distribution throughout the city? It shouldn't be concentrated in any one area. And it should also, when I talk about equity on this subject, I also talk about we shouldn't be putting homeless people, unsheltered people in warehouse districts or in commercial districts. They're people just like us. They need to be in housing districts. Secondly, as a city council, I think you should start looking at what the outcomes of these resource centers are. If they just cycle people through over and over and don't actually provide a positive outcome for them, then why are we continuing to support this model? The third thing I want you to think about is case management. If you supply housing, but you don't supply the help that these folks need to go along with it, they're going to end up back on the street again. That's one of the powerful things that Carl's organization does. And finally, I want you to think about creating truly safe spaces for all residents of Salt Lake. We all have different needs. Somebody who is housed, who has a home, we have different needs, and we have valid concerns about what goes on there. But somebody who's willing to live by the river or live out on the street, they also need a safe place too. And we need to figure that out. We are too wealthy as a state, as a city, as a country to let this continue.
Time. Next will be Sean McMillan, followed by Janet Hemming, and then Barbara Elmer. Sean is here in person.
Hello, thank you. I'm Sean McMillan, and today I'm here in my capacity as the co-chair of the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. I want to thank the council for all of their hard work, as well as the mayor for her hard work on this very complex issue. I've appreciated the opportunity to work with this group of leaders, and much has been done. The Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness has appreciated the opportunity to offer its expertise and provide feedback throughout the Homeless Resource Center text amendment process. Once again, we would like to take this opportunity to comment as you thoughtfully consider the proposed amendments. The Salt Lake Valley Coalition is supportive of this text amendment, but we would like to offer a few additional comments, considerations. Timeline. The Salt Lake Valley Coalition proposes specific time frame for the process with a total period limitation of 6 to 9 months in order to mitigate the challenges the applicant has in navigating the purchase of real estate and securing financial resources. Size. The Salt Lake Valley Coalition recommends the zoning map amendment application be the process for facilities of all sizes, thereby expanding the relevant locations for the proposed facility. Siting. Clarity is needed regarding where HRCs can be sited. Potential applicants need information such as a map or specific guidance from the planning department as to where HRCs can be located. I'm very short on time. I'm not going to be able to get through the letter. There's more detail. Know that it is our great desire, that it's our great hope that we don't come before you about HRCs or more shelter. What we need in our community, in our city, is housing that is affordable to all of the citizens of this community. The other thing that we need, and many of you know this because you've provided support for it, that there are individuals who need supportive services, and they will need it for an extended period of time in our community. Thank you.
Next will be Janet Hemming, followed by Barbara Elmer, and then Casina Kanasiva. Janet, you may now unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. One of the biggest concerns about the new HRC standards is they are nearly identical to the existing ones. And those have not only been problematical, but have done very little to build public trust. We all know there are complexities associated with HRCs: funding, operational challenges, staff shortages, and the broad and diverse needs of the homeless. But those must also be weighed against another set of important facts. Our shelters are responsible for the highest calls to police. They have burdened our fire department and civil enforcement officials. Nearby businesses and homeowners have also experienced elevated rates of crime. And while there have been certainly some great human successes and improved lives, questions remain about the efficacy of the current model. As elected officials, one of your primary duties is to ensure public safety. Let me restate for the record that the Yellcrest Neighborhood Council supported the attempt to open all homeless shelters to other parts of the city. But in doing so, we assumed that crime and safety issues associated with its existing shelters wouldn't be duplicated. Since their existence, HRCs were required to annually submit written reports to city officials. pertaining to community complaints and their resolution, actions to prevent unlawful behavior, the security of surrounding neighborhoods, internal on-site security, noise reduction, and much more. To our knowledge, none of those reports have ever been filed. We know the task before you is complicated, but we implore you to set a higher standard for the operation of HRCs. We want to be supportive, but will find it difficult to do so if things remain the same. Thank you.
Next will be Barbara Elmer, followed by Ksenia Kanasiva, and then Robert Danielson. Barbara is here in person.
Hi, my name is Barbara Elmer, and I am here as a homeless individual in the city of Salt Lake. I have been homeless for the better part of 18 years in your wonderful city. This year alone, in the last year, I have been abated 49 times because of the great laws of the city. One of those times, the city took my RV and my child into DCFS custody because I was a homeless individual. Instead of giving services to the homeless that need help, who choose not to go to shelters because of safety issues, because of theft, and because of pure PTSD, we're forced to go camping, and you come and steal our stuff. You force us to freeze to death. I have lost 75 friends this year due to hypothermia, drug overdose because they can't get warm enough to stay alive. It is crap, and I believe that we need something simple. It's a 12-step program, and the first step is a sanctioned campground where we can go, where it's low barrier, where we're safe, where we know our stuff is safe, so that we can become the proper citizens of Utah and be self-sustained, so that we can be just as independent as everybody else.
Next will be Ksenia Kanasiva, followed by Robert Danielson, and then Luke Mendez. Ksenia is here in person.
Hi, thank you so much for having us here. We brought some of our nomads and friends from the street. I do want to say thank you to the City Council for coming and supporting our work. Analia brought really great empanadas last time. We appreciate you. We're here to ask you guys, yes, more shelters. People are freezing. We need to do whatever we can to get people inside, but also the people we serve will never step foot inside a shelter again. A lot of them won't. And for very valid reasons. Barbie over here stayed in a shelter, the Midvale Family Shelter. Her little girl got bit by so many bed bugs. Mama decided that being outside, camping is safer for the child than having the baby urinate blood and be on antibiotics for 6 weeks. There are problems in shelters, and I know that we understand that. I know we're trying to do better, but the shelter system is not the be-all, end-all system. There are people that deserve privacy, people that have PTSD that cannot be in a congregate setting. That's why we're pushing for a sanctioned campground. We can create amenities and utilities, bathrooms, hookups so that they have space heaters in their tents. We've housed people in tents in backyards with great success. They're warm, they're safe, there's bathrooms. We can do that in a plot of land, just a forsaken plot of land under an overpass or next to a railroad, anywhere. Just give people the stability and the safety, because right now the misnomer is that people don't have jobs on the streets, and they do. But in the mornings when there's a bulldozer and a cop standing in front of their tent, they have to choose whether they're going to go to work or they're going to pack up their survival gear. And that shouldn't be a choice that they have to make. The current system is only promoting instability, and we need to have other options. And we can do that cheaply, much cheaper than building a new HRC. We can do that with purely nomad labor. Right now, the people on this here today are living in a bus 24/7. We bought the blue bus. There was a Deseret News article, and they're happy and they're thriving. That can be a solution. Thank you.
Next will be Robert Danielson, followed by Luke Mendez, and then Josh Story. Robert, you may now unmute.
Yeah, my name is Robert Danielson, and I'm a property owner in District 5. I have a business that happens to be right next door to the Gail Miller Resource Center, and it's been incredibly obvious how mismanaged and how ineffective the lack of resources are at the resource center. The only people benefiting from this are the directors of Shelter the Homeless and the Road Home, which are both making over $200,000 a year. The crime inside of these facilities is abysmal. It is unforgivable. We have a city council that won't do anything to hold these organizations and these sites to their conditional use permits. So the question comes to mind, why would a failing system be rewarded with more property and more money when their existing facilities are nothing more than a complete failure and a profit center for these quote unquote non-for-profits? I strongly oppose offering any resources whatsoever to the current organizations running these resource centers right now, as they're complete and utter failures.
And next will be Luke Mendez, followed by Josh Story, and then Travis Datto. Luke is here in person.
Hello, my name is Luke Menders. I've been a homeless person off and on for the last 5 years, and it's been due to being attacked, and whether it's mental disorder or something actually attacking me. I haven't been able to be too close to people, or I've needed my own space, and being in apartment buildings and stuff like that, it has a lot of factors for safety concerns and things like that for me, or for everybody, I feel like. And so I'm out there, and I'm really good with my eyes. I see the patterns and everything, and when there's an issue, you can look at all the patterns and see what the issues are from. And there's a lot of things that need work, but this is connected to everything. To not have a place to go that's safe is a big deal for people that maybe are out there for the night, couldn't get a taxi or anything home, you know? The downtown stores, like the one place that I think should be a safe place as well is like a gas station with lit up parking lots. Like why can't, you know, they don't like you hanging out there either if you don't have any place to go. But that's just gonna be a consistent for the future for every city. There's need for that, and there's need for the number one thing, which is safety. And that I have a lot of things to say, but I think this is just a good start for that, so.
Next will be Josh Story, followed by Travis Datto, and then Audrey Evans. Josh is here in person.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about a few things. Like, there, kind of what Cassini touched on, there is like spaces. There's been other cities and, you know, places that have allowed, or, you know, like a piece of land to use. And I just believe that, like, if we handle things kind of out of compassion and like realize that these are all real people, these could be your brothers, sisters, moms, dads, you know what I mean? We had to help a 74-year-old man that laid on a sidewalk for 3 days in just sheets, right outside of a resource center. And like, he would have died. And I just believe that, like, if we all work together a little bit better, that we can accomplish a lot, because as the Nomad Alliance, we actually do like a lot of big things, and we're just grassroots, all volunteer and all donation. And wow, I have a whole minute left. I've never done this before. What? Yeah, just sanctioned campground. That's like basically what I was getting at without, you know, saying those words. It would just a space. If we could just have a space, we have a lot of good ideas on how to like help people in a real way, like show them love basically, and show them like better ways of living and how to lift themselves up out of where they're at. And like Barbara was saying, like on the street, like people can't do that. You know, like if you go spend some time down there, because I volunteer a lot, so when I go down there, it's like I get to see what really goes on, you know. And I would never ever want to be subjected to that. It's not fair. It's kind of cruel, and I know it is people's jobs to raise themselves up, but it's not a bad thing for us to help raise them up.
Next will be Travis Datto, followed by Audrey Evans. Travis, you may now unmute. Okay, we will message with Travis and move on to Audrey Evans, who is here in person.
Good afternoon. I'm Audrey Evans, and I am a small business owner here in Salt Lake City. I grew up out in the West Valley area, and ever since I became a very successful entrepreneur in real estate, I've done development for economics in the United States and outside. I've seen poverty with my own eyes, and I know that this is a great country. This is a country with extreme wealth. We have a 4% economic growth coming to our country every single day. And the amount of billionaires that live on this soil is a privilege to every single one of us. I challenge each and every one of you council members to disguise yourselves, contact a women's shelter, a men's shelter, make an appointment to be seen, ask for a bed, and time yourself how long it would take for you to receive a place to sleep. I leave you with these few words, that the people that you saw today are what they call the boots on the ground, and they've done more in the shortest amount of time I've seen and witnessed with my own eyes has been accomplished throughout this winter. This has been the longest winter we've ever seen, and these projections happen through agricultural calendars that we see these snowstorms. We don't watch dead bodies outside and think that that's how it's supposed to be. I also want to suggest that there's a distortion between the city council and their obligation versus a mayoral position and their obligation. These are things that should be done simultaneously. We shouldn't have two different bodies of government working in two different directions. It's one whole concept. We can look at lots of people that are on the streets, and any one of you could lose your home at any time due to pre-existing. Your children have lost a job, your parents could lose a job, your home can come down. There's lots of factors why these people don't have a home today, and I think it takes just a little bit of humanity to see what's really happening on the streets. Thank you.
Next will be Natea Hamilton, who is here in person.
Hi, thank you for listening to us. I've moved to downtown Salt Lake in September. It was December when I was walking my dog one morning in the bitterly cold temperatures, and I came upon a man around the corner, and I just thought, I hope I don't see anyone sleeping on the streets tonight because it's far too cold. It was 16 degrees as I looked at my phone, and he was waking up and telling me how cold he was and he couldn't feel his fingers. I said, why didn't you go to a shelter? He said they were all full last night. I got turned away. It was then I decided I'm going to do something. And I've written letters, and luckily I listened to a podcast where Rocky Anderson was talking about how this is not okay on our watch. And he mentioned a church on 2nd and 2nd that said, we are not going to allow this. We're opening our doors. And I started volunteering. And I have never witnessed such a display of love for our fellow men than volunteering at 2nd and 2nd. And it showed me that there is something we can all do. And since I have invited every city liaison that I have gone to, because the mayor won't show up, but she'll send her city liaisons. So I have begged them to come to the 2nd and 2nd and see how this is done right. Instead, we're sending money to programs, the Gail Miller Center, that isn't done right, and you guys aren't holding these people accountable. And I'm sorry, if you're gonna blame it on the county, then your messaging isn't getting through because you're getting blamed. And it doesn't look like you're doing anything. So if this is all the county's doing about not funding shelters, about encouraging all these abatements in the middle of winter and taking things that I have donated, I don't make a lot of money, but I'm not gonna watch people die on the streets. So I'm gonna give them sleeping bags and I'm gonna give them tarps. And you're gonna take it away and you're not saying anything.
And that was the final registered commenter.
Was that the last one, Taylor? All right.
It looks like we had one more person wanting to speak, and that is Amy Hawkins, if that's okay.
All right. Amy?
Amy, you may now unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, council members. My name is Amy J. Hawkins, and I serve as chair of the Ballpark Community Council. Since they began in fall 2019, I've participated in most neighborhood advisory council meetings for the Gail Miller Homeless Resource Center, which is located in the Ballpark neighborhood. I applaud that these text amendments include transparency and annual reporting, but I urge the council members to please consider making the requirements for annual reporting on neighborhood issues, on health and safety and capacity issues reported by guests of the Resource Center, and community safety reports uniform and applicable for the current resource centers in Salt Lake City. Many of us in the virtual or literal room tonight are involved in the conversation with our state legislature about the need for more resources, more mitigation funding. But we need metrics and reports to make those arguments effectively. Having publicly available data that community members and policymakers can access without a GRAMA request would boost transparency and trust with community members who'd like to see that their comments are in fact represented in these annual reports. At present, from the Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting minutes that have been shared with us, it seems that their issues aren't making it into the reports. Since the Gail Miller Homeless Resource Center opened in fall 2019, businesses surrounding the Resource Center have experienced heightened rates of repeated damages to their property by some people experiencing homelessness, but also those who prey on them. Owners of these businesses can no longer afford to pay for their insurance premiums for the accrued damages, or they're afraid to make claims because they'll be dropped from yet another insurance carrier. We need this information to be clear with our state legislature about what it takes to host a homeless resource center in a neighborhood and what additional resources it might take to host one where the issues are truly mitigated and that it is safe for people to be in the center. Thank you.
Okay, and that was our final registered commenter.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you everyone who made a comment. Council, I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second. I have a motion from Councilmember Pui, a second from Councilmember Fowler. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion carries 7-0. We will move on to public hearing item B2. It's an ordinance regarding a rezone and master plan amendment at 865 South, 500 East. Before we begin taking comments, I'll first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a proposal to amend the zoning map for the parcel at 865 South, 500 East from its current RMF 30 zoning designation to CN or neighborhood commercial. The proposal would also amend the Central Community Master Plan future land use map from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial. The petitioner's stated objective is to convert the single-family residential structure to an unspecified commercial use.
Thank you, Brian. Taylor, please start with our comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like there are 3 people registered to speak to this item. The first will be Cindy Cromer, followed by Valerie Greer, and then Kayla Olson. Cindy, you may now unmute.
Hi. It snowed this much in Salt Lake before,
I just wasn't as old then as I am now. The snow tonight is yet another insult to the public process regarding this rezoning and master plan amendment. 2 weeks ago, the notice posted on the property was wrong. I didn't see a sign at all on Sunday when I was there. It's not surprising given our inclement weather. This is your first meeting with Zoom, and I did figure out how to get here, but I have had to have some help. And the alternative in person would be to deal with the snow. What you're looking at is the problem that Central City has been facing for decades: death by 1,000 cuts. The mentality is that one more house won't matter, but it does, especially in a neighborhood losing its family-oriented housing. And that is the highest and best use of this property, located across from Liberty Park, near a fabulous infant daycare and one of Salt Lake's after-school programs, in addition to abundant coffee shops, restaurants, gift stores, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention hand-dipped chocolates. There have been multiple failures of public process, but the fatal flaw is that no one could reasonably know about the proposal to put an ADU behind this house, right where the neighbor has documented parking for the commercial uses under the same ownership. My understanding of state statute adopted in 2018 is that a development agreement would have to go through the entire public process. I do not see how the city can ensure that an ADU will be constructed without a development agreement. The dysfunctional housing loss mitigation ordinance does not require replacement of the housing on the same site. Short version, I believe that the proposed ADU would violate state statute, compounding all of the other issues with public process. If you say no, Salt Lake retains a unit of family-oriented housing. That should be a simple call to make. Thank you.
And the other two registered commenters have left the meeting, so that was the final registered commenter for this item.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Cindy. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I would like to move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Pui. I have a second from Councilmember Valdemoros. Any discussion on the issue?
Madam Chair, you asked us to check on whether that was accurate information about the noticing being wrong. I don't know if you'd want to defer for just a few minutes until we can find that out.
Yeah, I was actually debating that. So let's go for because you know Cindy knows and maybe she would know. I trust her feedback. So let's
we leave this
let's
open.
continue the hearing.
Come back to it at the end.
I can move on to hearing B3
on the motion.
Okay,
Just
we're just
wait
going to
on the
wait
motion.
on the motion and move on to hearing B3 and hope that we have clarity.
Back to the motion once we have more information.
Thank you.
Is that okay with you? I mean,
Well,
it's your
so
motion.
I withdrew my motion then.
Okay,
I withdraw.
thank you. All right. While we wait on that bit, let's move on to item B3, which is a grant application, the Marathon Petroleum Community Investment Grant. Before we begin taking comments, I'll turn the time over to Sylvia Richards, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give us a short introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The city applies for and receives grants which help support and pay for some city programs. Each grant application is reviewed and then receives a public hearing, which gives the public an opportunity to comment on them. Tonight, there's one grant, the Marathon Petroleum Community Investment Grant, which will provide improvements to the fire department training tower, which will help with training for responses to gas-related and hazardous incidents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sylvia. Taylor, please start the public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is no one registered to speak to this item.
All right, I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I move that the council close the public hearing and refer item B3 to a future consent agenda for action.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilmember Fowler, a second from Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Do we have any B?
But I was an aye. So I couldn't get to the unmute button, sorry.
Even if we move into the next section. All right, then let's move on to section C, which are potential action items. The first one is the ordinance on electric vehicle readiness for off-street parking stalls amendment.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I move the council adopt the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dugan, a second from Councilmember Valdemoros. Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries 7-0. The next,
Madam Chair, can I make a motion?
all right, Councilmember Valdemoros.
I move that the council adopt the ordinance and include the following conditions. Remove conditional use requirements for ADUs. Establish the maximum size of a detached ADU is 1,000 square feet. Adversely affected parties have right of enforcement for violating terms of an ADU restrictive covenant. Adopt the ordinance as proposed, retaining the owner occupancy requirement for properties with ADUs. The minimum corner side yard setback is 20% of the lot width or 10 feet, whichever is less. Provide a minimum of 1 off-street parking space for ADU residents with the following exceptions. If the property is within half a mile of designated bicycle lane or path, if the property is within a quarter mile of transit, if sufficient space for on-street parking is available in front of the primary residence. I further move that the council adopt the following legislative intents. It is the intent of the council to revisit this requirement in 3 years. In the interim, data will be collected and reviewed regarding numbers of ADUs constructed during this 3-year period, barriers to their construction, and impacts to the neighborhoods. It is the intent of the council to provide $1 million in one-time funding to provide financial support for ADU construction, and it is the intent of the council to fund 2 additional civil enforcement employees for ADU enforcement.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Valdemoros. I have a second from Councilmember Pui. Any discussion on the matter?
Yes. And I second that motion, not because it's my favorite motion. I think this is not the right approach. I think it is not quite what we need to do in the city. But I appreciate that some of the concerns and some of the things we have found some consensus, while not the consensus that I wish we do. We need more housing in this city, and this is part of the solution on housing. And the concern of the owner occupancy requirement is talking, and you have read it many times and listened to this in these meetings, talking about renters as a problem. Who wants some renters, and I quote, I'll paraphrase, I guess, who wants some renters next to your house, right? And we need all the housing that we can get. I still support removing the requirements. I think that's it is the right thing to do. I wish we didn't stop there by keeping that requirement in there. But I also want to second this motion because to highlight that this council has met some places while we didn't agree all the way. I also appreciate that we are working with enforcement, something that we all suggested, and we put it in there. I also support that removing some of the barriers, but I think that we could do more, especially because we are hearing, and including in this meeting, so much about housing and the need for housing and the need for density. Even earlier today, one of the council members here, one of you said, when talking about a completely different issue, we need more density, we need more housing, but at the same time didn't want to remove this issue, which is a barrier. So I still see some conflict in there, but I appreciate the work that we have done while it was rough at moments. I actually think that we need to highlight the work that we have done to move ahead.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other comments?
I would like to make a comment in response to Councilmember Pui, because that's I mentioned today that we need to densify our city and downtown because we're in a geographical area that it's constrained right now, and we will have to do that. But the reason why I made this motion and the requirements here about starting, we're dealing with a couple of issues: the enforcement, the short-term rentals, enforcement that hasn't happened in years, and that's on us to figure out. Understanding that they're really good, that we do need the housing, understanding that there are good landlords out there, and understanding that there are good developers out there that could be that could provide ADUs faster than than what could happen. But I feel like with this $1 million that we proposed here, we can help with ADUs, for the people that own properties right now in the district, in some of our districts, to help those first that have shallower pockets, if you will, and see where it goes. And then we'll have 3 years of a timeline to figure out if we did something right and help with the home ownership, with the anti-displacement, sorry, I'm getting nervous here, but with all the things, housing and destruction of neighborhood characters that we see so often, because we do have a group of developers that do buy houses en masse and just limits the opportunity for people to keep that owner occupancy. Also mind us that we had a property tax increase last year. So this $1 million potentially helping families build an ADU for a family member or somebody else can help offset those things that we had to do, unfortunately, last year. So I appreciate you seconding this and coming to a conclusion that this way. It's been very contentious at times. I do feel strongly that we have a good path forward with the 3-year requirement that we're going to come back to it with the enforcement, with $1 million one-time approach to see if we can make a dent, but slowly and orderly. And in 3 years, for sure, we'll decide on this again, and maybe we can open the floodgates so we can get more density.
Thank you. Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you. And I just appreciate all the comments and the engagement we've had across the city and across the council on this ordinance. And I appreciate the discussions we've had. I don't think there's any council member here who would say this is exactly what they wanted. And that's part of the compromise, and that's part of the political process here. Yes, there's some great things in here that I love, and there's other things, boy, I wish I could change. But that's part of the compromise. And I think we have some great information here. I like the $1 million. I'd like to review in a couple of years. I like some other things, and there's other things I could change. But that's the process, and I appreciate the process we went through, and I appreciate the discussion across the city and across this council. And it was done in a very civil manner, so I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Wharton.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this has definitely been a lightning rod issue on the council for sure, but I really appreciate what Councilmember Pui said, and I want to make it clear as well, as somebody who is really outspoken on this issue and has tried to address it from the homeowner perspective and the renter perspective, that I think everybody on this council understands and welcomes renters in Salt Lake City. Not everybody is going to be able to achieve single-family home ownership or home ownership, or maybe they don't want to. Maybe they choose to rent, and all of those people, all of the above and more, all need to have a welcome place in Salt Lake City and are a welcome part of our community. So I hope that came clear through our discussions from this side. I know also that this doesn't go as far as some on the council would like, but I want to thank everybody for the work that we put in. We have removed some major administrative barriers that we've identified over a long period of time that have been major hurdles to having more ADUs. And because of our discussions on owner occupancy, we have achieved things in other areas like enforcement and providing funding for people that, because of like financial constraints, would not be able to build ADUs. And we're advancing on those two areas because of the discussions that we've had on this council over the last couple of weeks. I don't think that we would have made progress on those areas if we hadn't had these intense discussions. So I hope that, as Councilmember Dugan said, there may be a piece of this that all of us don't like, but I hope that all of us see that the work that each and every one of us put into this resulted in something better that wasn't going to happen if we had just passed this on a straight up or down vote without the discussions that we had. So thanks to my council members on this. Thanks, Councilmember Pui, for your comments. And I'm glad to vote on this and move on to the next issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Wharton. Councilmember Mano, did you want to say anything?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for engaging in this conversation. I know it's been difficult. I agree that we probably all didn't get everything we wanted, but this is a huge step forward overall for this ordinance and for housing. And just the reason I'm joining remotely today is because I'm at the planning conference and I've attended everything I could about housing and ADUs. And our discussions really match the national conversation that is happening on a national level. So I think all of these moves forward with financing tools are exactly what every city is grappling with. And I'm really excited that we're going to be one of the leaders in helping create some of those new programs.
Thank you. I want to amplify one point, and I'm thankful to all of my co-counselors who have individually discussed this with me, that any pretext that our conversations and discussions and investigation of the possibilities around this could imply that property owners are a privileged class in this city who deserve additional protections or deserve to be heard above any other is a fallacy that cannot be tolerated by us and will not be tolerated by us. Additionally, as renters are one of the constituencies that is continuously growing, I want them, and thank you, Amy, for representing them here. I want renters to know that not only do we hope you are engaged, we are cordially inviting you, we are begging you to be engaged, whether it's at the community council level, it's on a board or commission, whether it's just you going to the Second and Second Coalition and engaging down there, whatever your connection to the community is, you are not a detail. You are someone who is valuable, whose contribution is wanted, and your status is equivalent to every other American. We have long ago in this country decided that property ownership was not rights for having your voice heard above others. We removed it as a poll test, and we're not going to inadvertently or passively institute it going forward. And I am thankful to my co-counselors' commitment to that with me and our mutual commitment as we move forward. I am thankful also to Council Chair Mano, who possibly is the single largest engine for challenging all of our complacency on this issue and got all of us to explore concepts that we would not have and got us to envision what moving forward in a progressive way would look like and convinced us to really engage with this issue on a deep and significant level. Your leadership has been invaluable, and I am so privileged to have served alongside you as we wrestled through this. And with that, I would like to call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I have never been more thankful to say that something has
gonna
passed and
frame
we're
this
done
one.
with it. Thank you, that passes,
burn
and
it.
we are done,
Oh, no.
7-0. I would like to very quickly revisit hearing B2. We've received notice that while the original sign was improperly posted, we have now, it was corrected on March 22nd. So we have now met the 10-day posting requirement with 2 days to spare. So we are safe to vote on this action item. So I will look for a motion on hearing B2, the rezone and master plan amendment at 865 South 500 East.
Madam Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council.
Cindy Lou?
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Councilmember Dugan, a second from Councilmember Pui. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries unanimously. Let's move on. We're done with all of our C stuff. We are now going to move on to Section D. The first portion is questions to the mayor from the city council. Mayor, thank you for being here. Rachel, thank you for being here as well. Council, any questions?
When is the snow gonna stop? Mayor.
Could you
we
please
know?
do something about the snow?
Yes. Thank you.
Mayor, could we maybe take this opportunity to remind those who weren't tuned into work session where they can find information about what we're doing to prepare for potential flooding? Please visit our Salt Lake City Public Utilities website. There are sandbags available if you are in a flood zone. Do we know which those are, those of us close to the river? There is a map available to you. Thank you.
And we've sent all those attachments out on social media.
All of those attachments are also available on a council social media. Thank you all. All right, now we are at general comment portion of our agenda. As a reminder, Isaac Canedo from our staff will moderate our Zoom and will message you with any questions about your registration. Staff is handling many tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal information updates. If you do need to speak with our staff, please select Isaac, spelled I-S-A-A-C, Canedo, from the list of participants.
Madam Chair.
Please only use the chat. Hang on one second. Please only use the chat to chat for troubleshooting and registration inquiries, and be sure to direct your message to Isaac only. If you need to, please use the raise hand control to indicate that you need something from the host. Taylor Hill and our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment. We will call the names of people on Zoom and in person based on the order of registration or received comment cards. If you are on Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. I want to remind everyone about our rules of decorum, which apply to this comment section. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you're unable to finish your comment, please send the rest via email, mail, or call our office. We also need to observe when other people are commenting. While I am definitely with you and feel enthusiasm when I agree with someone, those public expressions of it need to come in the form of a smile and less audibly. Councilmember Mano, do you have something?
No, I was going to mention that Isaac's name in Zoom was Orlando, but it was just updated to Isaac, so we're good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Taylor, you can begin with our first general comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like there are 11 people registered for general comment. The first will be Oakley Hill, followed by Melissa Tizicko, and then Jakey Silo. Oakley, you may now unmute.
Hello, my name is Oakley Hill and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ogwai Garden. I'm a senior at the University of Utah, graduating in May with my undergrad degree in Gender Studies and Social Justice Advocacy. The Ogwai Gardens is a testament to the sacred human-land relationship that Indigenous cultures proudly hold. To take away the garden would be a detriment not only spiritually but agriculturally. The Ogwai Gardens, as stated on their website, was created and is managed 100% by volunteer community members and is a prime example of how food can be free and accessible. Its name, derived from the Shoshone word river, is referencing its prime placement on the Jordan River. This garden is a staple piece that represents reciprocity between us humans and the earth, as balance has already been misaligned due to overconsumption by humans, specifically through impacts of settler colonialism and corruption by means of privatization of natural resources. The Ogwais work with MMIW Plus Utah, advocating for and raising awareness about the humanitarian issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Utah specifically needs to be acknowledged and commended. The Ogwai honors strong leaders, strong women, and specifically highlights the strength of community bonds. The Ogwai specifically honors Hallie Ann Vandenberg and Margarita Santini. My apologies if I mispronounced those. Margarita Santini, a social justice advocate, works tirelessly in the Ogwai, and her effort and strength is honored through the memorial in their garden. Hallie Ann Vanderberg, a Dirt to Table volunteer and fellow social justice advocate, had hand-planted marigolds and sunflowers in the Ogwai Gardens, and this is a direct quote from their page, as indicative of how life can thrive even in the most adverse environments and situations. Thank you.
And next will be Melissa Tizicko, followed by Jakey Ciolo, and then Dee Platero. Melissa, you may now unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Melissa Tisco. I'm a sociology student at the University of Utah, and I am also commenting in support of the Agwai Gardens. Agwai fights to build space for healing and community building to gardens, which are located along the Jordan River. Indigenous community members have expressed how gardens like Agwai provide connection to their ancestral ties, culturally relevant food and medicine to their communities, build connections, and hold events. In a report on the Agwai Gardens by University of Utah researchers, it was found that the garden aligns with city development plans by providing the community with opportunities to support urban agriculture, collaborate with others in the neighborhood, and experience the now unique lens. In their University of Utah research report, it was found that urban agriculture is viewed by Salt Lake City residents for its capacity to increase community resilience, health, and food access. Community-led organizations like Agwai also provide a vital space for advocacy. Agwai has worked extensively with MMIW Utah, a group which advocates for raising awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in our state. Community leaders have expressed how the gardens have opened a door to conversations about Indigenous issues and how they impact the community. Agwai has worked hard in the past to meet city expectations.
Thank you.
And next will be Jakey Ciolo, followed by Dee Platero, and then Mail Arvin. Jakey, you may now unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Talofa Lava, my name is J.K. Ciolo. I'm a queer victim advocate and work for Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resources. Though my comments here are my own, I am also commenting on the Agwai Gardens. I just want to urge you to invest in community, invest in our spaces that we cultivate and create. This was a space that was overlooked until it became something blooming. We see the same thing with the murals on 300 West, an area of town that had nothing until it became a community space. As someone who works with Indigenous survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, it's so crucial to have these spaces for community members to come together and have connection to the land and also to the land that is stolen. And so I just urge you to support the garden in all forms of what that looks like, whether it be, restrictions and policy and things like that. I know that community members want to work together for that. I also, speaking as a queer Samoan, to see Margarita Satini's mural at that garden is a space for all Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders in this valley. There's more Pacific Islanders, or we have the largest diaspora of Pacific Islanders in Utah. 1 in 4 Tongans lives in Utah. And so this garden has been a space, especially through the pandemic when Pacific Islanders were always at the top of deaths from COVID-19. So I just urge you to invest in our communities and really understand what that means to invest in our communities. Thank you.
And next will be Dee Platero, followed by Mail Arvin, and then Mark Rioa. Dee, you may now unmute.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dee Platero, and I'm a member of PANDOS, which stands for Peaceful Advocates for Native Dialogue and Organizing Support. I would also like to comment in support of the Agwai People's Orchard and Garden Project in response to the letter received by the collective on March 21st to remove the garden by May 1st of this year. So volunteering at the garden has been a way to connect with my Indigenous community living in an urban area. Almost half of Indigenous people in Utah live outside the reservation areas, and 46% of Indigenous people in Utah live in urban Salt Lake. The Agwai Project has been meaningful to me because it practices a gift economy which is rooted in Indigenous values and traditions. This is a powerful model for promoting sustainability, reciprocity, and community well-being. Instead of commodifying goods and services for profit, the gift economy values relationships and the circulation of resources as a means of creating social connections and fostering trust, such as the artist murals that have been given to beautify the garden and memorialize community activists. Important traditional medicine plants from the Ogwai Garden have been shared with Indigenous families to provide comfort after the passing of a loved one due to tragic violence. Salt Lake City is ranked as the 9th highest number of cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women in the United States. The act of growing medicine is an act of resistance against the systemic violence that has been perpetrated against Indigenous peoples for generations. It's a way to reclaim traditional practices and knowledge, to honor the memory of those who have been lost, and to provide healing and support for those who are still with us. Planting medicine is an essential step towards healing and justice for Indigenous communities that have been disproportionately affected by violence and trauma. From the garden, the Puget Sound area have also partnered with the Ogwai Garden over the past 2 to 3 years so that our Indigenous community has access to specific plants for medicine, healing, and ceremony. In closing, I'd just like to ask the deadline be removed and reconsidered, and continue to work with us to keep this community space.
And next will be Mail Arvin, followed by Mark Rioa, and then Deanna Taylor. Mail, you may now unmute.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Miley Arvin, and I'm the Director of Pacific Island Studies at the University of Utah. I'm also here to ask that you support the Ogwai Garden. As many have already said, the Ogwai is a community-based project modeling how food can be free and accessible along the Jordan River Parkway Trail, and that it was created lovingly by and for the people. The public lands, Salt Lake City Public Lands, recently and suddenly notified the garden that everything has to be removed from the site by May 1st. They've also said that they're supportive of the garden and want to shepherd it through various kinds of official approval processes, but those processes can't start until the fall. So what we're asking is that that you all support, taking away that deadline, because removing all of the existing infrastructure, the trees and plants, would be a huge setback, both practically and morale-wise, for the community who runs the garden, who had thought that a process was underway with the city to receive official approvals. And I want to add why this is important to me specifically. In November of last year, our Pacific Island Studies program hosted an event featuring 3 Indigenous community garden projects. We had leaders from the Carry the Water Garden, the Healthy Roots program of the Utah Pacific Islander Health Coalition, and Pandos, including Dee, who just spoke. The event was so wonderful as folks from the garden shared so much wisdom and love. And Michelle Brown and Dee Platero from Pandos spoke eloquently about food and medicine grown at the Ogwai. After that event, our program's faculty and students have continued to grow relationships with these gardens. And we also worked quite a lot with Margarita Satini, who's memorialized in a mural at the Ogwai. Our students really see themselves reflected in her image and legacy, and it would be a blow to them to see that mural removed.
Next will be Mark Rioa, followed by Deanna Taylor, and then Lionel Trappier. Mark, you may now unmute.
Hello, my name is Mark Roya, a resident here in Salt Lake City. I'm asking for the city to please lift the May 1st deadline to remove the Ogwai People's Orchard and Garden while we work through the formal CIP process with the city. The trees in this garden were first planted in 2020 as an amazing act of community stewardship. I was personally fortunate enough to stumble across the land in 2021 while walking along the Jordan River Parkway. Since that time, I've had the opportunity to meet and work with a diverse and caring group of people that are volunteering their personal time, resources, and physical efforts to provide a much needed service to the immediate community and the entire surrounding city. Salt Lake City communicated through the 2022 Parks Master Plan that their first goal is environmental health and sustainability. The 2 related transformative projects that were communicated through the master plan related to that are to put environment first and to grow our urban forest. The orchard and the 30+ trees contained within clearly contribute to growing our urban forest, and more importantly, a food forest that provides a perennially fresh, nutritionally dense food to our community with absolutely no cost or prerequisites to or from the recipients. The garden as a whole puts our environment first in numerous ways. This space began as a completely neglected lot full of nothing but trash, debris, and unmitigated weed cover. The collective efforts of the garden volunteers have been adding to the biological diversity that this space desperately needed. The organic approach to the space is in far contrast to the complete lack of effort put into the space prior to our involvement. Again, I'm asking the city to please lift the May 1st deadline to remove the Ogwai People's Orchard and Garden while we work through the CIP process with the city. Please allow us to continue providing this much needed resource to the community and to continue caring for this small plot of land in a caring and thoughtful manner. Thank you.
Next will be Deanna Taylor, followed by Lionel Trapner, and then Adair Kovac. Deanna, you may now unmute.
Hello, council members. I am Deanna Taylor, and I'm speaking about the Ogwai People's Orchard and Community Garden, which is an asset that has been a benefit to the community for 3 years, including students, families, and individuals who enjoy its many features. The Ogwai project's mission to provide free and accessible food aligns well with the aspects of the city's food equity recommendations for future success, such as the inclusion of cultivating food and medicine plants that are culturally relevant to Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, community agency by way of a diverse planning collective of partners from various neighborhoods and other organizations, and connecting with schools to enhance and strengthen education regarding food growing and healthy eating. The Ogwai also aligns with the city's transformative project, Reimagine Neighborhood Parks, in that it sits on a once neglected lot, transformed into a welcoming, inclusive space for all to enjoy, learn about healthy food and biodiversity, create and enjoy community art, and become a steward of the land through community engagement. The current plan and long-term vision for the Ogwai contains community assets such as raised vegetable garden beds, including wheelchair accessible beds, pollinator gardens, an outdoor classroom for experiential learning, self-guided educational tours of the orchard, and local artwork. The Ogwai project is sponsored by a state and federally recognized 22-year-old 501c3 and has various volunteers with decades of expertise who have guided and created its infrastructure. I am asking that the city please lift the May 1st deadline to remove the Ogwai People's Orchard and Gardens and continue working with the Ogwai volunteers to finalize the draft land use agreement. Thank you.
Next will be Lionel Trapner and then Adair Kovac, followed by Jack Bellows. Lionel, you may now unmute.
Hello, my name is Lionel Trapanier. I am a Salt Lake City resident. Thank you to the council persons for taking comments. I am a big bicycle fan, and I volunteer at the Ogwai Garden. I'm asking for the city to please lift the May 1st deadline to remove Ogwai. I bike on the Jordan River Trail to this garden on many Sunday mornings, spring to fall. I'm asking Salt Lake to not evict Ogwai. Here's why. Ogwai is a welcoming space, aligned with the goals of Salt Lake City's Public Lands Master Plan. Ogwai volunteers in the past 3 years, this time of COVID, came together and cared for this neglected land on the Jordan River, just north of our fairgrounds. We turned this underutilized weed patch into a vibrant community space, alive with activities that involve and empower residents. When Ogwai started, our community needed vibrant outdoor spaces. We still need this vibrant outdoor space, especially here and elsewhere on the west side. The city has been supportive of this garden in fits and starts, and I'm asking that the city again rejoin the Ogwai supporters. The public opinion survey that done by the city reportedly has showed high level of public support for Ogwai. The garden is a perfect opportunity to address soil quality and contamination concerns that are prevalent throughout our neighborhoods. We need to learn and educate our neighbors about safe gardening because the soils throughout our communities contain concerning levels of lead and arsenic and other contaminants. Ogwai is already an important community asset. Please don't evict Ogwai as we move through the CIP process. Thank you again for taking these comments.
Next is Adair Kovac, followed by Jack Bellows, and then Joan Gregory. Adair, you may now unmute.
Hi, I'm a volunteer with the Ogwai People's Garden, and I want to just tell everyone that your support has made me cry. I didn't know how much this garden meant to everyone, but I have put in so much time working under the hot sun to bring love and to bring sharing into this community. So my task today was to mention that the city's public lands master plan also prioritizing connecting people with our public lands, getting people to engage in enjoying the space and actually using it, not just running past it. Get people to learn how to steward the land. We're doing all that in the garden. We have educational workshops. We get volunteers involved. We're all learning and teaching each other. We provide public art and flowers that people can walk through and enjoy. I just saw puppies playing in the garden. That was just so much more interesting than the flat mowed beds of weeds surrounding it the last time I was there. And of course, we see families walk through. We see people actually enjoying the produce of the garden and so on. We took this neglected lot and we've made it something that enriches lives, provides food, and will even produce more fruit trees that people can bring home over the years. The public lands department's points against the garden seem weak compared to the value that the garden provides for our community. And they're also something we're committed to address if the city will just let us work with them. We have a plan, we have expert advisors, we have people who've been through this before that want to help us get through the process. I hope you'll allow the trees we planted to grow up and provide fruit, enjoyment, learning, and a sacred connection to the land for generations to come, not bulldoze them.
Next will be Jack Bellows, followed by Joan Gregory. Jack is here in person.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jack. I am originally from Atlanta, but I've been living in the greater Salt Lake area for the past 2 years. I'm an English student at the U. I am an educator with the Salt Lake City School District. I'm a community organizer, and I am an avid supporter of the Oglala People's Orchard and Garden. You see, gardening has helped me heal and grow as a person in a way literally nothing else does. Throughout most of my life, I've battled and I've survived severe mental illness, and gardening is a huge part of that for me. It's meditative, it's active, it literally feeds your soul, and I'm such a believer in gardening that I was the subject of a short documentary about horticultural therapy, and I find this council's intent to, I find even the entertainment of the idea to destroy the Oglala Garden shameful. I think y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. I've had a very difficult time finding community gardens in Salt Lake, and this is coming from someone with immense privilege. People of color, especially indigenous folks whose land we're on, are disproportionately affected by food deserts, income inequality, and the effects of climate change. Homeless people whom this council and mayor have systematically waged war against are even more sensitive to these injustices. Gardens are a part of the solution to food insecurity, the mental health crisis, and the looming climate crisis. Unfortunately, this council has proven y'all are completely apathetic and hostile towards these causes, as is shown by the fact that you want to destroy this space on an unused lot. That lot was empty before the Oglala Garden was there. I don't see why the community shouldn't make use of it for good. It's a waste otherwise. Y'all abandoned your neighbors at the doors of this building and are now actively punishing them for taking things into their own hands. You would rather build a $7 million water park on the west side during a drought than support truly authentic expressions of culture.
Time.
Okay, thank you.
And next will be Joan Gregory. Joan, you may now unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I just want to echo all the concerns and comments that have been made. I've lived here in Salt Lake City for over 35 years, and this project, you can tell by the comments that you've heard today, this project is important to the well-being of this community, the Oglala community, the West Side community, our Salt Lake community. The well-being of the community that gardens here and the well-being of those who have gardened here in the past and those who will garden here in the future. It nourishes bodies and souls. That is what gardening does. Community gardens build soil and community and food, all of those things. And we can't lose this garden. It is part of our community. It is part of our lives. Please give Agua Garden and Wasatch Community Garden and all those who are assisting in this effort the opportunity to move forward together for the sake of the soil, for the sake of the food, for the sake of the people, for the sake of our community. I thank you for opening your hearts and minds to letting them continue. Thank you so much.
And that was the final registered commenter.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you to everyone who commented. I'll look for a motion.
Oh, I don't think we have a motion on
Oh,
that.
sorry.
That just general comment? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to new business, which there is none at this time. So then we're going to move on to unfinished business. E1 is an ordinance, the zoning map amendment at approximately 130 North, 2100 West. I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt an updated ordinance that includes a condition that the property owner enter a development agreement with the city requiring sound attenuation in new structures constructed on the property, or if there is a substantial remodel of an existing structure.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dugan, a second from Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion on the matter? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries 7-0. This brings us to section G, Oh, 6-0, thank you. Councilmember Fowler is not voting. Thank you. This brings us to section G, our last item of business under the consent portion of our agenda. Before I call for a motion, we want to remove items 8, 9, and 10, the reappointments for the Sister Cities Board. Our staff needs time to confirm the term information before they're listed again for a council vote. So I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of items 8, 9, and 10.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Wharton, a second from Councilmember Dugan. Is there any conversation? All right, I'll look for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries 6-0 with Councilmember Fowler not voting. And this, my friends, brings us to the end of this meeting. Thank you. We are adjourned.
To 1958, but ended up buying it back from them in 1970, and they've been operating it ever since.
Artu? Where are you? Artu? R2? R2, you're on fire! R2-D2, you found